This is so worn out that the top is simply too short, because you can see this bit from underneath, and it's the same thing on the sides. It's just there is not enough overlap. I've been thinking whether I can actually save this top, because it's not a problem to replace this middle bit, but there are other bits missing. There is some damage in the middle, there is some woodworm damage, but the main problem is that it's just so worn out from being sat on that this top simply isn't long enough. And this would be pretty easy to fix because I could just glue a piece and extend it. But the problem is that it isn't wide enough on the sides, and because this is end grain and I would need to fix it in too many places, it would just ended up looking like a puzzle. So basically this top needs to be a bit bigger than it is because all the edges are just worn out. Hello beautiful people, and welcome to another video. After this long explanation, all you need to know is that I'm basically going to replace the top and try to save the rest of this chair. And this is visualization of how hard I'm trying to save it. This chair is definitely old, and you can tell that it was handmade because the parts that should be identical, they're not, and actually they're quite off. This actually looks like it's in a decent shape, so I can probably save this. Let's see if I can take this apart. I don't know exactly, but if I were to guess, I would say this is early 19th century, so probably about 150 years old or so. This is broken, and I believe this is original, so I'm going to glue this. Also, another thing that kind of gives away the age of this chair is the fact that it's put together with wooden pegs and old style nails. Part of this piece broke off, so I'll need to re-glue it. And believe it or not, I actually did, but for whatever reason I decided not to record it. Here I'm mixing high-strength hydrogen peroxide with a little bit of ammonia, and I'm going to use this solution to give this chair a proper clean. As I mentioned, this is way over 100 years old, and a lot of bums have sat on this chair, and it needs to be properly cleaned. As you can imagine, ammonia stinks really bad, so that's why I'm doing this outside. And also it was a nice weather, so you can actually see better what I'm doing. This works really well, as you will see in a minute, but it's also super gross, but I know you guys like it, so you're welcome. After cleaning this properly, I gave it a good rinse with clean water, and I left it outside to dry in the sun because, as you can see, it was actually a really nice day. Even this is just cleaned and I haven't done anything with it, the color change is quite dramatic. I can see there's some woodworm damage. It's nothing too serious, at least I'm not worried about it as far as the strength of this chair, but I will need to do something so it looks better. What I am worried about is that all of the ends of the legs are rotten, so I'll need to fix that. I've been looking for a piece of oak that has similar grain pattern so I can use to make the repairs. And I found this board that was part of a chest of drawers that I used to work on, so I think I'm going to use this. This board was not thick enough and it was too wide, so I simply cut it in half and glued both of the pieces together. There was a top coat on this board, so I simply sanded it off so the glue has something to bite onto. And now I'm gonna clamp it, let it dry, and Bob's your uncle. I guess after all, I did show you how I glued this piece back on, I just didn't do it when I said I was going to. And now I just need to put a bunch of color coordinated clamps on it and let it dry. It definitely wouldn't have bothered me at all if they were not all yellow and evenly spaced out. This little piece had some shims originally, so I made some and put them in. There's a piece of wood missing, and actually if you look at this side is much thinner than this. That's the difference. And there's nothing missing here, this is just how it was made. So it's just very uneven. That's a lot. This doesn't affect the functionality of this chair and just shows you that this is not factory made. And I don't know if the person who made it didn't care if those pieces were the same dimensions or they just used whatever material they had available, but I think that's the beauty about handmade pieces. By the way, this contraption I'm using right here, that's an angle finder, and it's exactly what it says. It just helps you find the angle so you can transfer it from one thing onto another. And the tape is just so I won't need to clean any glue squeeze out. Because, you know, I'm a professional. There was a crack in this piece, or basically a little bit was trying to split off, so I pushed some glue in with my little brush and clumped it together. And now I need to cut off a bit from every single leg because they're all rotten and I'll need to extend them with good quality pieces of wood. Because this isn't straight, it actually curves upwards. So I'm thinking that I'm going to glue this one on top of this one, but overlap a little bit so it covers the gap, and then as I shave this down and create this shape, I think it will cover the repair nicely. At least that's the plan. Even if you can't see this in the video, the surface of the wood on this entire chair is super rough and there are just thousands of little imperfections, and I think it's because it's been exposed to moisture and dirt and abuse and everything over the year. It's just really rough and I will need to sand this whole thing. If you have watched any woodworking videos, you probably know that I can't simply glue something to the end of this leg because it just wouldn't be strong enough. So I'm using my router to create a surface for a joint that will connect to the extension. And this way it will be much stronger, if it makes sense. And now I just need to make 4 extensions. Obviously I'll need to cut this in 4 pieces and that's how I'm gonna make the extensions, but this needs to be flattened first because I just glued those pieces together and they're a bit rough. And you could do this with a table saw or a planer. My planer isn't great and I can't be bothered using my table saw, so this is what I'm doing. And as always, I'm also showing this to you so you know that you can do the same thing in many different ways and it's often just your preference. And because there are 4 legs on the chair, I need to cut this into 4 pieces. This is another one of those things that you can do in many different ways. I'm using my miter saw, which has a trenching feature, and this basically allows me to remove some of the wood and create a half lap joint. Though if it isn't half but a bit off, it really doesn't matter. As you can see, these pieces are way too long and they're oversized, but I will need to shape them and cut them to size, but I will do that later. This one needs to dry, and now I just need to do this 3 more times. And Bob's your uncle. As always, quick shout out to everyone for watching my videos, liking and commenting and hyping, because that allows me to do what I do and helps the algorithm figure out that you guys enjoy my videos, and it will hopefully show it to more people. A special shout out to the channel members, you guys are the best. And if you haven't subscribed to my videos and you want to be notified when I post a new one, click the subscribe button, it's completely free, and I'll love you forever. And if you're feeling generous and want to support what I do, you can find all the relevant links in the description. Thank you. By the way, if you haven't figured out what I'm doing right here, I'm basically making a template for the seat, and now I'm using my calipers to extend the template by, I think it was like ½ an inch or something, so there is an overhang. This is part of an old table that I found on Facebook Marketplace and used in a previous project, and I'm going to use it for the seat. It's obviously way too thick, but I'll deal with that later. This is another example of the things that you can do in many different ways, and I've probably chosen to do it in the least appropriate way, but hey, it worked. This is way too thick, and unfortunately this won't fit in my thicknesser, but I don't want to cut it and re-glue it just to put it through my thicknesser. I'm going to use my electric planer, and I think I should be able to manage and get it fairly flat. You might be thinking that the grain direction on this seat is probably not the usual orientation or direction, but I think it's perfectly fine, as thick as it will be, and as large as it is, I think it will easily take the weight that someone will put on it. I was just pointing at some dings and imperfection in this seat. I was going to leave some of this varnish to make it look more aged, but as you can see, there's some issues, so I need to sand it off. Now that the seat is the correct thickness and it's sanded, I'm going to round the corners so it looks like the original seat. By the way, I'm making this seat slightly larger than the original seat, so there will be a bit more overhang, but that's just how I like it. I guess you can think of it this way, it will accommodate larger bottoms, so it's more inclusive. The edges of this seat are square, and obviously that's not very comfortable or pretty, so I'm going to round them over. This is definitely much better. Now that I'm happy with the seat, I can sand it with high-grade sandpaper so it's nice and smooth. That's how the original seat was put together. There was a piece behind it and this original piece on top of it, which I'm going to sand and save. But now this repair is nice and dry, so I can actually shape it. I simply cut off most of the wood with a pull saw, and I'm going to use a combination of tools. This is just a hand plane. I'm going to use a chisel as well to get it to more or less the correct shape. And now a little bit of sanding and Bob's your uncle. Now I need to make sure that the other sides of this repair look nice, and I can start sanding the rest of the chair.
$2,000 later.
Now that I'm mostly done sanding, I can take a well-deserved cut break. At this point, it's mostly details like these, so I'll need to do it by hand. Now that the legs extensions are dry, I can start working on them. I've cut the legs to the length, but now I need to shape them, because I don't know if you noticed, but the legs are kind of tapered. I'm going to use this funky device, and as you can see, the blade goes right up to the very front of it, so this will basically allow me to get into those tight spaces and will basically give me more control. I don't even remember the last time I used this definitely not cheap device, but I guess there's a time when it comes very handy to have. And that's exactly what I tell myself when I look at all of the crap in my workshop. Because you never know, might be next year or in 10 years, but I'll definitely need that tool. So these repairs obviously have some very small joints that I use wood filler to close, plus there are lots of little holes from woodworm and many other holes. So I patched all of them up and I let it dry. This will be mostly covered by the seat, but I'm going to fill this in. And by it, I mean woodworm damage. After inspecting the legs closely, I decided they needed some extra work, so that's what I did. And now that I'm happy with the legs, I can clean up and sand this little thing that was in the back of the seat so I can actually use it. And because this looks pretty rough, I'm going to apply oxalic acid to bleach it a little bit so it will blend with the new wood that I use for this seat a little better. And now I can do some final hand sanding and fix all the imperfections and rough edges so I can actually stain it. I'm going to use brown mahogany. This is spirit-based stain, and I'm going to spray it on because this is a chair and it's just pretty complex as far as the shape. So this is just gonna make it much easier. Obviously there's some new pieces of wood used for the repairs, so I'll need to do some extra staining and color correction so they all blend in nicely and look okay. because the seat is brand new compared to the rest of the chair, and stain alone probably would be a bit more challenging to match the color perfectly. I'm using lacquer toner on the entire thing, so it all looks nice and even. By the way, the lacquer toner, that's walnut color. Pretty happy with the color so far. Obviously this doesn't have clear coat on it, but I need to add the rest of the pieces so it's all together. The original seat was attached with nails, and I guess this wouldn't be flipping drawers video if I didn't take advantage of that fact and used brass nails. By the way, the reason I'm wearing a mask is because this is all fresh and it's off-gassing and there's still some vapor in the workshop and I just don't want to breathe it in. I think the nails are the perfect touch because otherwise this isn't a very exciting piece of furniture, so they just brighten it up a little bit. There's still some minor imperfections that I'll need to address, but I need to put the clear coat on first and let it dry so I know exactly what color it is. I'm using satin lacquer, and this is pretty much it for the video. I hope you enjoyed this project. Let me know in the comments what you think about this. Give me a like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.